All right, ladies and gents, as we start to wrap up uh, the rest of our program, we've got a wonderful club layout that we're going to get a tour of now. It's the Caldwell Club in the Caldwell, Idaho, Boise area. It was established in 2005. The main layout is 23 by 40 foot. It's HO freelanced, and it depicts what is the railroad history in the state of Idaho. I think member Ron Saunders is going to be leading the tour. So at this point, Russ, if you can turn it over to Ron and the Caldwell Club layout.
All right, we're going to start with a video. We occupy a club-owned building housing a 23 by 40 foot HO and a 12 foot by 15 foot east floor, along with meeting space, restroom, storage, and an office. The club was formed in 2005 and was originally located on the third floor of the Eagle Lodging College. In this space, members learned new skills and constructed a simple layout. After the economic downturn of 2008, the commercial real estate market dropped enough for us to get a building at auction in 2011. Today, we'll be discussing mainly the HO layout. The HO layout is a dual mainline point-to-point with an embedded helix for continuous run capability. The vision of the layout was to represent the rich railroad history of Idaho. While the layout design elements, or LDEs, model these historic locations, they are not put together geographically in the same as the real world. As such, for example, you will find Caldwell east of Napa, unlike the real world. Also, because of the vast interest of club members and our goal to model Idaho's railroad history, not all LEDs are the same kind of system. The point-to-point layout the two charts show the mainline. The layout runs on a digitrack system with 6 boosters. Digitrack wireless, Wi-Fi phone throttle through around digitrack access point. The layout has 2 dedicated DC buses for accessories. Club is currently in the process of adding signals and operations to the layout. The benchwork for the layout is box frame on top of I-beam joists. Let's watch a few minutes short video shots before we continue with a look at key scenes.
Right now, it's just music, no speaking right now. Right, so that completes the video. So I have to give credit for the video and for the slides you're about to see to Chris Mesa. I'm Rob Saunders. Russ is going to start the slides in just a second. I've been a member of the club for about 7 years. I did 4 as president, and I'm currently the senior committee chairman. The beginning of the video, you may not have heard all the words, so I'll repeat quite a few of them as I go through the slides, but we'll go over some basic photos of the HO layout and then some specific scenes. The club's out of downtown Caldwell. We're lucky enough to own our own building. A handful of some fairly generous members went to an auction in 2011, and we got down to one other bidder and us. And when the other bidder found out what it was for, he bowed out and let us have it. So we've got about 35 adult members right now and about 15 associate student members. We're a nonprofit. We've got a pretty good training program. We're just getting started back up again. As you saw the picture in the beginning, we started off in the 3rd floor of an Eagles club. We got tired of the 3rd floor aspect and the limitations of the space. So we got tired of the 3rd floor of an Eagles building. We got our own building. The club has always done N scale and HO. We're about a handful of people do N, about a handful of people do both scales, and then the rest of us do HO. We also have a bunch of club members that do other scales at home, O scale, garden. We even have a college student who bought a Speedster last year that he's refurbishing. The layout originally started from a run show perspective. It's a point-to-point going from Pocatello in Idaho to Hinkle, Hermiston and Hinkle Yard in Oregon. We're depicting different railroad scenes historically in Idaho for the most part. The layout as shown is not geographically correct. It's not, things are pulled down from northern Idaho instead of being in the Treasure Valley or Magic Valley area. But we're trying to do scenes from all over Idaho. We don't follow any specific era. You'll might not notice in some of the pictures, but Boise's in the 1890s, and right next door is Caldwell in the 1950s. So it just depends on what was the most interesting part of a specific area. We don't limit which road members are using. We've got some members that like to run British stuff. We have sometimes some New York subway cars running around. We don't limit, run what you bring. Over time, there's been some changes to the layouts, different interests from new members, interests change. We're now starting to get into operations and putting a lot more thought into operations and having to make some changes to the layout when the layout was made for the way it looked as opposed to the way it operated. The HO layout started in 2012. The N scale layout, they're on their 2nd layout in the building. They started over in 2019. We did a small building remodel to give the N scale people some more room. And one of our, first experiences with the joys of owning a building was finding asbestos tile and having to deal with that. The building was an old print shop. We've had trouble with the epoxy floor covering sticking because of all the ink in the floor. We've had some challenges and had to redo that. We've had to replace a swamp cooler for an AC. We've had to improve the furnace. The membership's a fairly frugal group. Bylaws, we have a building maintenance fund, we have an emergency fund, and then we have the remaining balance that we can spend. And we've done a pretty good job over time of keeping the balance positive. Part of owning your own building is dealing with property tax. We've been successful working with the county to obtain an exclusion for doing property tax based on our community service. So we're open 2 times a week, Wednesday night, Saturday afternoon, to the public. And we also attend numerous activities in the county and the valley. So we've done things like the Murphy Outpost Days, the Emmett Cherry Festival. We go to the Boise Depot birthday party. We go to the Caldwell Indian Creek Festival, Winter Wonderland. We go to senior centers. We've done 2 great train shows, and we went to the NMRA convention in Salt Lake City 2 years ago. We have a travel HO layout and a travel N scale layout that we take to events. So basically the geographic, you're looking at the layout on the screen there. You start at Pocatello, you work your way past King Hill, Mountain Home. Then we pulled the city from the north. You go past Moscow, you go past Sun Valley, you go past Ketchum, make your way to Cascade. So you spend about 2/3 of the layout at the upper level, and then you spend the rest of the third of the layout making your way down to the lower level. So you go through, you end up in Cabarton, Craigmont. Go to the next slide for me. This one's the lower level. So you make your way through Craigmont, you go to Boise, you go past Caldwell, Silverwood, pulled down from the north of Idaho. Simplot's got a big factory in Caldwell, got a fairly distinctive building. Go through Nampa, end up in Lewiston. So we pulled Lewiston down from the north part of the state, and then we're calling the yard Hinkle because there actually is a large yard in Hinkle on just not quite the other side of the border, but partway into Oregon is Hinkle. So go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So a little bit of electronics. So we're the club is a Digitrax group in the building. Numerous of us do other systems at home, but the layouts, both layouts are Digitrax. Left picture showing the simple light switch so you can turn everything on, a fairly easy process so that any member can turn the layouts on and off. I'll show you a blow up of the right one on the next slide. So this is just kind of a topology of what the layout looks like. We're currently running a Digitrax DCS 240. We've got 6 boosters. We've got 6 PM242 power managers. We've got 6 PSX power district cards, auto reversers. We're pulling the wireless and the infrared from Digitrax panels. We also have a Digitrax LN Wi-Fi module. And then we're connected to a laptop running JMRI to a Wi-Fi router. And so we can do the tablets and phones either on the JMRI through the computers Wi-Fi or straight to the Digitrax LN Wi-Fi. Although the Digitrax one does have a bit of a limitation on the number of devices that can connect to it. We also have a 5-volt and a 12-volt bus system, so for DC power, and we're currently looking at the LCC to start a signaling project with signals, blocks detection, dispatcher. One of my current tasks is to break up power districts into blocks, so I'm rewiring a bit of the underside of the layout. Slide 7 right here, we start talking about one of the scenes. So Nampa in the Treasure Valley is kind of the center of the railroad. When Union Pacific was building track and they went from Twin Falls heading toward Oregon, pretty much going straight down the valley, straight line, went through Nampa, or started Nampa. Boise was kind of a win around because although it was the population center of the valley, there was a bit of a drop off from where the track was to get down into Boise. So Nampa became the railroad center of the valley. I enjoyed seeing Joel's layout earlier in the meeting talking about Caldwell and going from Caldwell to Winnemucca. If that had actually happened, Caldwell would be a much different town than it is now from a railroad perspective, since it's currently just got one single main line and some spur tracks. It doesn't have any of the yard stuff he's depicted. It'd be interesting to see what Caldwell would turn out to have been. But Nampa is the center of the railroad, so it takes a pretty large portion of the layout. Upper left on this, I'll show you another one in just a second, but the PFE had a pretty large facility here. There was a coal chute for loading up steam engines, and the coal chute lived until 1948. There was a large roundhouse. There was an icing facility to store ice and to reload the reefers, and then there was a yard in Nampa, or still is a yard in Nampa. So the next slide is a picture of the coal chute. It looks like from historical pictures, there was more than one. The particular one depicted here is had 2 loading arms per side. It did about 400, held about 400 tons of coal, and is reported to have done about 150 tons of coal per day out to engines. The next slide shows the actual a prototype picture. So the model was based on this prototype, with most of the measurements assuming the guy with the hat in the foreground was 6 feet tall. He looks like he was kind of in charge. The next picture shows the PFE's facility. So they had a large yard area and buildings and work area. They had about 700 people work there. It was about a half a mile long, and was probably about 16 or so tracks width, if it had that many tracks. They had both warehousing, a power plant. They had a large vacuum system to pull the dust and the sawdust from the work areas. They had an outdoor shed that had 5 tracks under it to work at. We shrunk it down to 3 in the picture. And they also worked on cars outside. The roundhouse, we're currently rebuilding the roundhouse. It used to be just 3 Walters kits, 9 bays. But one of our members was an employee there in the 70s. And he told us, finding an actual picture, it was 8 bays. And bay 8 wasn't used for trains. It was actually the break room, workshops, and an office. So we've been kit bashing to shrink it down to 8 bays and to change its configuration inside. The area of the roundhouse isn't currently there. The turntable still is. There's a small engine servicing facility there. They keep a blizzard bus around for winter operations. You can see in the background of the picture the coal chute, which in the prototype was about a half mile away. And then in the upper left, you can see the PFE area, one of the ice houses, and then the ice platform is kind of obscured behind the pillar there. There was a big place for icing. There were 2 ice plants at one time. The one you see in the picture has been torn down. The current ice plant no longer makes ice, but the refrigeration and stuff is used for food storage and then shipping out by train and truck. Another area model is the Cascade area. So in Cascade, in the prototype times, you could either go from Nampa to Emmett to Cascade, or you could go from Ontario on the UP main line, then go to Emmett to Cascade. The piece of the line from Nampa to Emmett is gone, and you go through Cascade, get to Emmett, then so you go from Ontario to Emmett, then you get up to Cascade.
It's Payette. You got to go to Payette.
Thank you. And so you do both mining and lumber up in Cascade. Next picture. We have a small lumberyard modeled. And then in the next picture, we have a small forest fire scene, which for most of us on the call today, we've either been in the smoke today or we're had it in days this summer. It's been a pretty smoky summer. It's helped keeping some of the temps down here, but it's not helping my breathing any. Next picture. Another area we model is Burke that we've pulled from the north part of Idaho. When you go across the Montana to Idaho border, you are on I-90 and you go through Wallace on the interstate, and about 10 miles up one of the canyons is Burke. And Burke was a mining area, lumber mining, zinc, silver, and lead. I think most people who mine there were hoping to get silver since it was worth more, but they got a lot more zinc and lead out of the ground, I think, than they did silver. Northern Pacific and the Idaho Railway Navigation Company, one of the UP companies, they worked the canyon. At different times, there were railroads on either side of a creek, and then depending on what decade it was, sometimes they used each other's tracks, and then eventually it went down to a single track. I'll go to the next slide. One of the distinguishing features is the Tiger Hotel on the left part of this picture. The canyon was so small that the hotel was built over the creek and the railroad went through the hotel. So in the prototype, the line continued about 800 more feet to the right, and that was the end of it. Then there was a spur that went to the northwest that went to the mine called the Hercules mine for a short amount of time. But mainly the track you're seeing was used for enable switching further south of that hotel. Next slide. So this is a prototype picture that shows the hotel after a large expansion was built. It gives you an idea of how small and how messy a place this was. On the bottom left is the Tiger Portman mine rebuilding after a fire. A fire took out the valley a couple of times, but not that hotel in that location. They also had several avalanches. The creek would flood sometimes, and then they had wars between the mines, and then they also had all the strikes that were pretty much wars between the employees and the owners of the mines. This picture is a little further south than the last picture. So at the top of the picture is the Tiger Hotel, then the Tiger Portman mine, then what you would call downtown Burke with the street and railroad going between the buildings. Some of the buildings are going over the creek. And then the mine structure that's the main part of this photo is the Hecla mine, and they did mining and lumber, both dimensional lumber and a lot of railroad ties, and also the lumber that was used to support the tunnels when they dug the mine. This, we're going to work on an expansion of the layout. So one of the things about owning a building and members' interest is we've had a little bit of open floor space since we did a remodel. So that when there's full space to be used, there's a desire to fill it. So we're going to expand Burke a little bit more than it currently exists to show the downtown running through the buildings, and then to bring out elements of the Tiger Portman mine and the Frisco mine and the Hecla mine that aren't currently on the layout. Craigmont is an area in the Palouse area. Yeah, the Camas Prairie Railroad was up there. Both the UP and the NP, Northern Pacific, were there. They did a joint venture for logging and grain. Rolling hills, pretty large hills, known for a lot of trestles. So we built it as a branch line from Boise to Burke. Next slide. One of the features, you've got the farming area, and then you've also got the bridge. Next slide. So we built the trestle. We did add a line. Most of the trestles, they're only a single line. We've got a 2-track main line, so we put an extra track. And this is both reminiscent of the trestle that's at Half Moon Bridge, and also an S, because of the shape of the layout. It looks quite a bit like the S bridge that's in northern Idaho. The trestle was built by Frank Smith. He built it upside down in his garage, and then we installed it on the layout. Another scene that we brought in is Moscow, a college town in northern Idaho, known for grain and lumber. Next one is a depiction of a grain elevator scene. And then the second Moscow slide is a picture of a lumber mill, the warehousing building. Both of these two scenes are kind of in progress. Made a lot of progress in the last year. Still got details to go in this one. Next slide. So another area we've modeled is the Wood River Branch. So in the 1930s, UP was looking to increase ridership on the railroads, and the chairman at the time was Averell Harriman. He was interested in making a ski resort. So he sent his employees to find a place on the UP network, and they found that the Sun Valley area would be good for a ski resort. So you would take the train to Ketchum, and then from Ketchum you would take the bus to Sun Valley, a short bus trip. The valley originally had some silver and sheep, and then the ski resort. Next slide. So one of the things that UP did is they were the first. They invented the chairlift. It was developed at the UP shops in Omaha. The primary engineer was Jim Curran. He'd previously worked at an iron company that did loading systems for bananas, and they used to do the bunches of bananas would travel by a cable system. They came up with the chair idea. They tested the chair on this contraption on this car, or this pickup truck, and with employees and testers on rollerblades, they determined that the best speed was about 3 or 4 miles an hour. So Sun Valley was the first chairlift in the world. Next slide. So Sun Valley, snow, so there's a lot of snow removal. You had to make sure you could get the people up there if you wanted to make money. So there's a lot of snow removal up there. The right picture shows the lodge, which is a closer up picture in the next slide. And this is the early representation of the lodge, kind of a prototype cardstock building. A little bit of forced perspective. It's not actually HO. It's shrunk it down a little bit because you're only actually about 2 feet away from it. So a little bit of information for the club. So that's our website, our address, and we're open twice a week to the public. And then the first Wednesday of the month, we also do a business meeting. I'm available for questions. I do have some backup slides if there's some interest in a few other scenes.
Hey,
All
Rob,
right.
sorry
see
about
anything.
interrupting you. I live in Payette. That's why I did it.
Understand.
All right, I don't see any questions in the chat. If anybody'd like to ask their questions or talk to, go ahead.
I'd like to say, I think that 2-track trestle was incredible.
It's quite a nice piece. It's probably total length is I think 7 feet and is S curved. So it's quite a structure. So I gave the end scale. So the end scales get a little bit of a little highlight here. They're about in year 2 of redoing their layout after we gave them additional space. We took out a closet and we gave them about 1/3 more space. Some views of Mountain Home and King Hill, with the middle left picture being the helix. So we've inserted a helix so that we can do continuous running, either when we're just playing around or if we're having an open house. So we insert the helix between Lewiston and Nampa on our track plan. Mountain Home area with a little F4 painting, a couple F4s on the backdrop with a cement plat in the foreground of the picture. A little bit more of a King Hill with an old farm silo that's missing its roof. Close up of that showing the helix. The helix, I think, is a 72-inch diameter and 2 tracks going up and down it. Lewiston, up in the mid to northern part of the state, right on the border with I think Washington, if I got it right. Yep, with the Clearwater River. And the backdrop was done by club members. We've got 2 talented painters. Lewiston gets some containers by barge. It's got a large paper mill. This part was pretty well modeled, and people who've been there come here and recognize the grain to barge on the river traffic. And then the railroad bridge, we kind of shrunk it. It looks a lot like the actual railroad bridge, but not near as long. We didn't quite have enough space. We kind of tucked it into a corner. And then the helix under construction, which is slightly different in the way we built it than in the drawings presented at the beginning of the slideshow. We kind of, instead of it being tucked into the corner, we kind of brought it a little bit more to the left, and then we put Lewiston in the corner and the staging yards to the edge of the layout area. Next, or is that the last one? And then I think this is the last one. It's the Burke area, with the left side being what you see on the layout surface, with a mine shaft and a tower for the to bring up the elevator. And the right picture is a close-up of the fascia showing the interior mine scene. And then cutoff is the elevator, which sometimes is working, but currently is not working. I think that's my last slide.
Okay, we have one question was the backdrop painted by a club member or was it an external commission?
It was a club member. Most of the backdrop on the HO was Jeff Klein is the guy's name.
If you're ever interested in wanting another resource to see the station at Ketchum or just kind of generically Sun Valley, there's a really good 1941, I want to say, movie by Glenn Miller. He was a very famous big band musician in the early 1940s. And so that actually has a scene where they show the Ketchum station, the Sun Valley Lodge, and also some of the trackage going to Sun Valley.
Correct. In the Mood showed up on that movie for the first time with his band playing it.
All right, well, without any more questions, Jeff, we're a little early, but I think I want to turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Victor. And Ron, thank you and the Caldwell Club. Very nice layout and great historical depiction. There's how to see Idaho in just a few hundred square feet. Thank you. Wonderful.